Imagine a mother who had the courage to order the murder of her children's descendants, or another who simply ate her own child, and yet another who viewed her child as so disposable that she attempted to exchange him for another woman's child. Absurd things, aren't they? Yet, these are the kinds of things the worst mothers in the Bible were capable of doing. Yes, the Bible records stories of some women who were terrible examples of mothers. Certainly, the worst mothers in the Bible failed greatly with their children, and in many cases the failure of these women in the role of being mothers influenced how their children grew into corrupt individuals. We can find poor examples of mothers in the Bible, both in the Old and New Testaments, from the milder cases to the more sinister ones. Even pious people like Rebekah set poor examples as mothers. We know that Rebekah showed favoritism toward one of her sons, which divided her household for a long time, to the point that one son wanted to kill the other. Consequently, Rebekah had to endure the pain of seeing her favorite son Jacob leave her home to avoid being killed by his brother Esau. She never saw him again in her lifetime. But of course, Rebekah is far from being one of the worst mothers in the Bible. Another example of a poor mother recorded in the Bible, far worse than Rebekah, is Herodias. This woman, a descendant of King Herod, left her husband to be with her brother-in-law, Herod Antipas. The Bible says that when this immoral relationship was exposed by the prophet John the Baptist, Herodias sought to destroy him at any cost. She found a way to satisfy her thirst for revenge by manipulating her own daughter. She allowed her daughter to dance sensually for Herod Antipas, ultimately securing his promise to deliver John the Baptist's head on a platter that very night. At this moment, you may be wondering if it can get any worse, and the truth is, yes. So, let's explore the 3 worst mothers in the Bible. The first bad mother on our list is an anonymous woman who lived during the early reign of King Solomon, around 970 BC. According to the narrative in the first book of Kings, chapter 3, verses 16 to 28, 2 harlots lived together and gave birth around the same time, only 3 days apart. But one night, one of the women accidentally smothered her child by lying on him. Yes, it was accidental, but what makes this woman one of the worst mothers in the Bible was her reaction to the situation. Instead of grieving over the lost child, she stealthily got up during the night, took her housemate's living child as if he were her own, and laid her dead child's body next to the other woman. In other words, she simply swapped her child as if he were a mere broken object. In the morning, when the other mother woke to nurse her baby, she saw that the child was dead. However, she quickly recognized that this was not her son, but the son of the woman she shared the house with. Her fight to recover her true child eventually reached King Solomon. In front of the king, both women claimed to be the mother of the living child. In his wisdom, Solomon proposed cutting the child in half with a sword so that each woman would receive half. Faced with this seemingly absurd proposal, the true mother immediately relinquished her child, preferring to see him alive with the false mother rather than dead. In contrast, the false mother agreed with the division, selfishly wanting the true mother to lose her child as well. Seeing the reactions of the 2 women, Solomon had no doubt about his decision and returned the child to his real mother. We know nothing about what happened to the false mother afterward. Whether she later regretted her actions or went on to have more children is unknown. We only know that, due to a fatal accident, she lost her chance to raise her son, but her behavior raises questions about what kind of mother she would have been to that child. The second example in our list of the worst mothers in the Bible is another anonymous woman from Samaria, as recorded in the second book of Kings, chapter 6, verses 24 to 30. This woman's story occurred during the reign of King Jehoram of Israel, the son of Ahab and Jezebel. During this time, the city of Samaria was under siege by the Syrian king, causing a devastating famine that forced the inhabitants to take extreme measures to survive. In this context, the Bible records that two women made a sinister pact. They agreed to kill and eat the child of one of them, and the next day they would do the same with the child of the other. Thus, the first mother killed and cooked her child for both to eat. However, when it was the second mother's turn to fulfill her part of the agreement, she refused to kill her child. Feeling wronged, the woman who had already sacrificed her son turned to King Jehoram for justice. Shocked by the situation, the king tore his robes and blamed the prophet Elisha for the people's suffering. The situation in Samaria was indeed catastrophic. The crisis was so severe that even a donkey's head, an undesirable part of an animal considered unclean by Mosaic law, was sold for 1 kilogram of silver. Even so, that mother committed the unthinkable because, no matter how bad things were, it is generally expected that a real mother would give her life to save her child, not the other way around. Moreover, even the other woman who refused to follow through on the pact and give up her child did not exhibit a strong motherly instinct, as she was involved in that horrible agreement and likewise ate the child who had been killed. The suffering was not Elisha's fault, but rather the result of the Israelites' sin, as they had broken their covenant with the Lord and were deeply corrupted by idolatry dating back to the time of Ahab and Jezebel. Speaking of Jezebel, we come to the third example of the worst mothers in the Bible. Surprisingly, it is not Jezebel herself, but her daughter, Athaliah. Undoubtedly, what Athaliah became had much to do with the evil influence of her wicked mother. Yes, Jezebel could also be included on this list, but it appears that Athaliah took her mother's wickedness to an even greater level. When Athaliah married Jehoram, the son of King Jehoshaphat, she brought her parents' idolatry into the kingdom of Judah. She influenced her husband to kill his own brothers. Later, when her son Ahaziah became the only surviving member of his family after the death of his father and brothers, he ascended to the throne of Judah under his wicked mother Athaliah's influence. However, his reign was short-lived, as he was killed about a year later. Athaliah seized the opportunity to usurp the throne of Jerusalem, and it was in this context that we can understand why she was such a despicable matriarch to her family. Have you ever heard the saying that a grandmother is like a mother twice over? Well, that was not the case with Athaliah. All her children were dead, and all that remained of her family were her grandchildren. Yet, in a completely insane move, Athaliah ordered the killing of her own grandchildren to eradicate the line of David and secure her hold on power. Fortunately, one of her grandsons, who was only a year old, escaped that massacre, saved by his aunt. He lived in hiding in the temple for 6 years until he was proclaimed king at the age of 7 in a revolt led by the Jerusalem priesthood against Athaliah. In this revolt, the grandmother no one would want met her end. In the face of all these atrocities, some may question why the Bible records stories like these. The truth is that the Bible does not hide the errors and failures of its characters, giving us the opportunity to recognize our need for God's grace in our lives. Far from the Lord, people are capable of committing the most disturbing acts even against those they should love and protect. These sad examples teach us to value divine guidance so that we do not make tragic and unimaginable decisions that may defy the Lord's commands and destroy our families. Do you agree that these are among the worst mothers in the Bible? Would you add more names to this list? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, subscribe now and activate the bell to receive exclusive content.